and welcome to China's Living Legends.
欢迎来到我的频道。
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to really tear open the pages of history, look at the figures who shaped our world, and, well, grapple with some tough questions.
And today, we've got a huge one, a real titan of history.
Absolutely. We're looking at Li Shimin, who you probably know better as Emperor Taizong of the Tang Dynasty. I mean, this guy's name is basically shorthand for brilliant rule.
Oh, completely. He is the benchmark, the mirror for emperors, they called him. If you're studying Chinese history, or frankly, effective governance anywhere, Taizong is unavoidable.
He's seen as this sage king, the architect of this incredible golden age, the Tang Dynasty, right?
Culture, law, stability.
For 3 centuries, it set the tone for East Asia for, well, 1,000 years. His reign, the Zhenguan era, it's the model.
But, and this is the core of our deep dive today, there's this massive, glaring paradox.
Yeah.
How do you square the sage king image with the reality of how he got there? Because this empire, this legacy, was forged in blood, his own family's blood. Yeah, that's the unavoidable truth. Before he was Emperor Taizong, the wise ruler, he was Li Shimin, the ruthless politician, maybe even a kinslayer.
We have to talk about the Xuanwu Gate Incident. Even just saying the name sends chills.
It's notorious for a reason. He didn't just defeat his rivals. He ambushed his older brother, the crown prince Li Shimin, and his younger brother, Li Yuanji.
Killed them. Personally involved in the killing.
Absolutely. Oversaw it. And then what does he do? Marches straight to his father, the founding emperor, Li Yuan.
And basically forces him off the throne. Intimidates him into abdicating.
It's brutal. So, yeah, the question is stark. How does that guy become the model emperor?
That's our mission today. We need to unpack these 2 figures seemingly locked inside one man. The cold-blooded strategist who seized power violently.
And the visionary leader who then built its incredibly prosperous and, well, relatively just society. What did it take? Not just to conquer, but to actually rule, to define an era.
It's a deep dive into power, morality, and maybe the necessary evils of history.
To give you a sense of his stature, think big. Think historical game changers. He's sometimes compared to Augustus in Rome.
Okay, ending civil wars, setting up a whole new imperial system.
Exactly. Or maybe Napoleon in terms of legal impact. The Tang Code he championed. It wasn't just for China. It shaped law across East Asia. He didn't just win. He set the rules for centuries. He was the architect.
So where do we start? To understand the architect, we need to see the blueprint.
We have to go back. We need to look at the warrior first, his military brilliance, then the political chessboard he was playing on this incredibly powerful aristocratic network, the GuanLong Clique.
Right. And finally, the founding of the Tang itself, the real story versus the, let's say, official version.
Let's start with the battlefield.
Yeah.
Because that's where Li Shimin truly came alive.
You really can't overstate this. Li Shimin grew up on horseback. His youth wasn't spent in palaces learning calligraphy. It was immersed in constant warfare.
From a very young age, he starts leading troops at 16.
16.
That's barely out of childhood. And he wasn't just a figurehead. This wasn't some ceremonial role. He was good. And critically, this direct connection to the military didn't stop when he became emperor.
No, he stayed a general, in a way.
Very much so. Years into his reign, you find him personally leading huge campaigns, like the one against Goguryeo in Korea. That's unusual for an established emperor.
And accounts paint him as this incredibly fierce, hands-on commander, leading charges himself.
Oh, yeah. Known for it. Decisive, brilliant at maneuvering troops, reading the terrain. He was a tactical genius, genuinely feared on the battlefield.
But it wasn't just about brute force, was it? There was a strategic mind at work even very early on.
Absolutely. And the perfect example, maybe the first real glimpse of this strategic depth, comes even before the Tang Dynasty is founded. It's the incident at Yanmen Pass. He's still a teenager.
Okay, set this up for us. What's happening?
At 615 CE, the Sui Dynasty, the dynasty his family will eventually overthrow, is in serious trouble. The emperor, Yangti, is personally trapped, besieged by the Eastern Turks under Shupi Khagan at Yanmen Pass.
So the emperor's life is on the line. A desperate situation.
Extremely. And Li Shimin, just 16 or 17, is sent with a relief force under General Yan Tingxing. The problem, they are massively outnumbered, hopelessly outnumbered.
Direct attack is suicide.
Completely off the table. And this is where young Li Shimin steps in with advice that honestly changes everything. It's pure psychological warfare.
So he doesn't focus on the numbers. He focuses on the enemy commander.
Exactly. He reads Shupi Khagan's mind. Kogan is deep in enemy territory. Yes, he's winning, but that's a vulnerable position. He's got to be worried about supply lines, ambushes, his troops' morale being so far from home.
Makes sense. He'd be jumpy. Suspicious.
Precisely. Li Shimin figures Kogan won't want a long, drawn-out siege if he thinks massive reinforcements are coming. He'll be inclined to cut his losses and run if spooked.
So the plan isn't to fight, it's to bluff.
A massive bluff. Li Shimin advises General Yun, make our small force look enormous. Create the illusion of an overwhelming relief army arriving.
How? Smoke and mirrors.
Literally. Spread out, make tons of noise, kick up dust, march troops back and forth in view, light thousands upon thousands of campfires at night across the hills. Make it look like the entire Sui army is descending on them.
Using Kogan's own fear and uncertainty against him, it's brilliant.
And it worked. Perfectly.
Yeah.
Chippy Kogan sees this apparent surge of forces, feels the psychological pressure mounting, the risk of being trapped, and he pulls back.
Wow. Without a major battle.
Without a fight. He withdraws his army. Yemen Cass holds, and Emperor Yangti's life is saved. Saved by the very teenager who will, just a few years later, help bring down his dynasty.
That's incredible. It shows more than just courage. It shows this deep strategic understanding of human psychology, even then.
That's the key takeaway about the young Li Shimin. He understood leverage. Warfare wasn't just about swords and arrows. It was about minds, that military genius. That was the tool he'd use to build an empire.
But first, he needed the political stage. And that stage was already set, wasn't it? This wasn't a rags to riches story.
Not even close. And if you miss this next part, you misunderstand the whole Tang founding. Li Shimin and his father, Li Yuan. They weren't outsiders storming the gates.
No, they were already at the very top, part of the establishment.
The absolute pinnacle of power, wealth, influence. Because they were core members of this entity known as the GuanLong Clique.
Okay, we need to define this, the GuanLong Clique. It sounds like something out of a political thriller. What exactly was this group? How powerful were they?
Think of it as a tightly knit oligarchy. A powerful, interwoven alliance of military aristocratic families, mostly based in the Northwest, in the Guangdong region. They weren't just influencing politics for over a century. They were effectively controlling the state.
So, like the ultimate old boys network, but with armies. Kind of like, I don't know, the most powerful feudal families in medieval Europe rolled into one.
That's a decent analogy.
Yeah.
Dupes and counts with their own power bases, but maybe even more centralized in their collective influence. The core group was tiny, maybe fewer than 20 families total.
20 families controlling the empire.
Essentially, yes. Descended from figures like the 8 pillar state generals and the 12 great generals from earlier dynasties. These weren't just nobles. They were the state's military backbone and its political brain trust.
And the proof is in the pudding, right? They didn't just serve dynasties, they created them.
Astonishingly, yes. This same small group of families produced the imperial houses for Western Wei, Northern Zhou, the Sui dynasty, and now the Tang. The Li family, Li Yuan and Li Shimin's family, they were blue-blooded members. Major shareholders, you could say, in the empire business.
Okay, so that's the context. They're insiders staging a takeover, not revolutionaries.
Precisely. And this context explains the next crucial phase, the inevitable clash between this aristocratic power block and imperial ambition.
You mean Emperor Yangti, the guy Li Shimin just saved?
The very same. Yangti wasn't content being emperor with a GuanLong clique calling the shots behind the scenes. He wanted to be a true absolute monarch, unconstrained.
And the clique was the biggest obstacle, the classic power struggle.
Exactly. Emperor versus the entrenched aristocracy. It's a story as old as time. Yangti started making moves to break their power. Very strategic moves.
What did he do? How do you attack a group that powerful?
He went after their power base. 2 main strategies. First, he moved the capital city.
From where to where?
From Chang'an, which was the heartland of the GuanLong families, their center of power and wealth.
Okay.
Eastward to Luoyang. Think of it like Louis XIV moving the French court to Versailles. Get the powerful nobles away from their regional strongholds, bring them into your orbit, dilute their independent power.
Disrupt their networks, their land holdings, everything. A massive logistical and political shakeup.
Huge. Second, he started reforming official titles. He tried to shift the system away from the military aristocratic hierarchy the clique dominated towards a more centralized bureaucratic model loyal directly to him.
So attacking their status and their administrative control too, these weren't just policy tweaks, this was perceived as an existential threat.
Absolutely. And when you push people that powerful into a corner,
they push back hard.
Right. This led directly to a rebellion. led by Yang Xuankan, one of the Clique members. It failed, but his failure just made Yang Ti double down. He stopped trying to reform the clique and started trying to eliminate it. Purges began. Ruthless purges.
So the gloves were off. It became kill or be killed, politically speaking.
And this climate of fear gets amplified by, well, ancient beliefs, superstition, prophecy, but used as a political weapon.
Ah, the Chanyan. The political prophecies, these were common, right?
Very common and very potent. A specific prophecy started circulating, one that really spooked Yang Ti. It spoke of a great flood surrounding the Mountain of Yang, meaning the emperor.
Okay, ominous.
And crucially, it was called the Song of Peach and Plum. Now, plum in Chinese is Li, the surname of Li Shimin's family.
Oh, so the prophecy basically said someone named Li is going to overthrow Emperor Yang.
That's exactly how it was interpreted. And for Yang Ti, already paranoid and purging the aristocracy, this wasn't just folklore. This was a potential rallying cry for rebellion, a self-fulfilling prophecy waiting to ignite.
So what did he do? He couldn't ignore it.
He reacted with more violence, specifically targeting the name Li. He started executing prominent members of the GuanLong clique with that surname. Li Hun, Li Min, powerful figures, eliminated simply because their name matched the prophecy. He was trying to preempt destiny.
But the irony, it's almost unbelievable.
It really is. In his frantic effort to kill off anyone named Li who might be a threat, he completely overlooks the one Li who matters most.
Li Yuan, Li Shimin's father.
Li Yuan. And the detail here is just perfect. The name Yuan can mean deep water or abyss.
Wait, so the prophecy talks about a great flood.
And the guy whose name literally means deep water, the one destined to rise in that flood against the mountain of Yang, is the one Yang Ti misses. Li Yuan, the future Emperor Gaozu of the Tang, plays his part perfectly, keeps his ambition hidden.
Which brings us to the founding itself. Because the story of how the Tang Rebellion started, well, that story got rewritten, didn't it?
Massively rewritten. And this is where we have to separate the official history, the version polished during Li Shimin's own reign as Emperor Taizong, from what likely really happened.
Okay, so the official version, the one Taizong wanted everyone to believe, what did that say?
The official Tang records, compiled during the Chen-Quan era, Taizong's era, they paint a very specific picture. They portray the father, Li Yuan, as hesitant, timid even, afraid to rebel against the Sui.
And Li Shimin.
Li Shimin is the hero, the driving force, bold, decisive, practically dragging his reluctant father into starting the rebellion that was destined to succeed. He's positioned as the true founder in spirit, if not initially in title.
But the evidence suggests Li Yuan wasn't timid at all, right? He was playing his own game.
Exactly. When you look at other records, Li Yuan emerges as a very capable, experienced military man, politically savvy. He gets appointed garrison commander of Taiwan, a really strategic post.
And he sees this posting as significant.
Hugely significant. Taiwan was the heartland of the ancient state of Tang, way back before the Qin dynasty. And his family already held the hereditary title Duke of Tang.
So the name Tang, his ducal title, the location, it all felt like fate aligning.
He apparently delighted in it.
Yeah.
Sources say he was encouraged by advisors, even his wife's cousin, Lady Tu, who pointed to the Li prophecy and the growing chaos. He saw the opportunity.
But he hid it well, that outward display of loyalty.
Impeccable poker face. When people urged rebellion, he put on a show of being horrified. Such words bring disaster, don't speak of them. Classic GuanLong caution.
All while using the chaos as cover.
Precisely. He used the very real need to suppress peasant uprisings and defend the border against the Turks things Emperor Yang wanted him to do as the perfect excuse to recruit soldiers, gather weapons, and build up his own power base in Taiwan. Patiently, quietly.
Okay, so Li Yuan is plotting. Then how does the official story, the Taizong-centric version, explain the actual start of the rebellion? This leads to that famous anecdote, right? The Qinyang Palace incident.
Ah, yes, the Qinyang Palace story. It's a masterpiece of political spin, crafted later. In this version, Li Shimin is deeply worried about his father's inaction. He conspires with an advisor, Lu Wenqing.
What do they supposedly do?
They decide they have to force Li Yuan's hand. So they arrange a banquet at the Qinyang Palace, the secondary palace. They get Li Yuan very, very drunk.
Okay.
And while he's passed out or incapacitated, they sneak in some palace ladies who technically belong to Emperor Yang Ti's harem to, well, attend to him overnight.
Which would be a capital crime if discovered. Sleeping with the emperor's concubines? Treason?
Exactly. So the next morning, Li Yuan wakes up, presumably horrified and hungover, realizing what happened. And who's there? Li Shimin and Li Wenqing.
Ready with an ultimatum.
Pretty much. They'll lay it out. Look, Dad, you've committed a capital offense. Emperor Yang will find out eventually and you'll be executed. Your only chance for survival now is to rebel. Seize the mandate of heaven for yourself.
Wow. So in this story, Li Shimin engineers the whole situation to leave his father no choice but to rebel. It makes Li Shimin the decisive actor, the one who saved the family by forcing the issue.
It's brilliant propaganda. It justifies everything that comes later, especially Li Shimin's own eventual seizure of power from his father and brothers. It paints him as the true visionary from the start, the one who had the courage his father lacked.
But it's likely not true, or at least not the whole truth. How do we know?
History is messy, thankfully. The official court records can be challenged. In this case, the counter-evidence comes from sources the court couldn't easily control. Private family histories, and crucially, tomb epitaphs.
Tomb epitaphs, like inscriptions on gravestones.
Exactly. These were commissioned by families to record the glorious deeds of the deceased for posterity. They were carved in stone, meant to last forever, and one particular epitaph blows a huge hole in the official Qinyang Palace story.
Whose epitaph?
Peiji. He was a key official, very close to Li Yuan, and according to the official story, he was deeply involved in this Qinyang Palace plot the drinking, the palace ladies, convincing Li Yuan to rebel. He was supposedly right there with Li Shimin.
So if the story were true, his epitaph should shout about it, right? Here lies Peiji, who bravely helped spark the glorious Tang Rebellion.
You'd absolutely expect that. It would be his crowning achievement, the central heroic act of his career. But when Peiji's tomb and epitaph were discovered centuries later,
Nothing.
it mentions the start of the rebellion, but it's vague. There's no mention of the drunken night, the palace ladies forcing Li Yuan's hand. Nothing about that dramatic, pivotal conspiracy.
That's pretty damning, but maybe they just left it out for some reason.
Here's the clincher, the timeline. Peiji died in the 6th year of Emperor Taizong's Zhenguan reign. The official history, the one containing the dramatic Qinyang story we just discussed, wasn't finalized and promulgated until the 14th year of Zhenguan.
Ah. So the official story literally did not exist in its final heroic form when Peiji was buried. His family couldn't put it on his tombstone because it hadn't been fully invented or solidified as the official narrative yet.
Precisely. The story was retroactively engineered years later, likely under Taizong's direction, to enhance his own role and legitimize his path to power.
So what's the more likely nuanced reality of the founding if the official story is spin?
It looks much more like a complex game played by both father and son, two shrewd operators from the GuanLong elite. They both saw the writing on the wall with Emperor Yang's purges. Rebellion wasn't just ambition, it was becoming necessary for survival.
So they were probably both plotting, maybe even semi-independently.
Quite possibly. Li Yuan was laying the groundwork patiently in Taiwan. Li Shimin, younger, bolder, more aggressive, was also pushing for action, conspiring with Li Wenqing and others. He was definitely the accelerator, the one pushing the boundaries.
He provided the dynamism.
Absolutely. He was the courageous advocate stepping onto the stage. But it seems Li Yuan, the seasoned player, ultimately made the call. The final act at Qinyang Palace wasn't about forcing a drunk father's hand.
What was it then?
It was Li Yuan, likely with Shimin and Li Wenqing now fully aligned, making the decisive move. They confronted and killed Emperor Yang's two loyal officials stationed there as spies, Wang Wai and Gao Junya.
Okay, removing the emperor's eyes and ears.
Exactly. Killing them was the point of no return. After that, Li Yuan officially raised the banner of rebellion in the name of Tang.
And all the sons played a part in what followed.
Yes, the military campaign to conquer the empire involved all three surviving sons. The crowned prince-to-be, Li Jiancheng and Li Shimin, both won major victories and gained huge prestige leading armies during the critical march into the heartland, the Guangzhou region.
While the youngest, Li Yuanji,
He had a less stellar record, notably failing to defend the home base of Taiwan later. But the key figures emerging from the conquest were clearly the father, Li Yuan, now Emperor Gaozu, and his two eldest sons, Jiancheng and Shimin.
one the designated heir, the other the celebrated war hero. That sounds like a recipe for trouble.
It was. The conquest was almost the easy part. Holding the empire and deciding who really deserved to rule it, that led directly to the next and bloodiest chapter.
Okay, so the Tang Dynasty is founded. Li Yuan is Emperor Gaozu. But the tensions that were maybe simmering beneath the surface during the rebellion, they explode now, right?
They absolutely erupt. Once the external enemies, the rival warlords fighting for control after the Sui collapse, are mostly dealt with, largely thanks to Li Shimin's military campaigns.
Then the internal rivalry becomes the main event.
Exactly. The focus shifts inward to the conflict between the brothers, primarily between Li Jiancheng, the eldest son, and officially designated crown prince,
The heir.
the heir,
Yeah.
and Li Shimin, the second son, the prince of Qin, the war hero who felt, probably correctly, that he'd done most of the heavy lifting to win the empire.
You've got the established successor versus the guy with the military power and arguably the greater popular acclaim, at least among the soldiers.
That's the core of it. Li Shimin commanded fierce loyalty from the best generals and the battle-hardened troops. These were men whose careers, wealth, and status were directly tied to him.
While Jiancheng had the legitimacy of being the chosen heir and probably more influence within the court bureaucracy, the civil side of things.
Correct. He worked the political angles in the capital, while Shimin was often away campaigning. The court inevitably fractured. Two camps formed, backing one brother or the other.
And it got nasty. Accusations, plots.
Oh, extremely nasty.
Right.
Constant political maneuvering, slander, accusations of treason flying back and forth. Both sides alleged assassination attempts by the other. It was a powder keg, and Emperor Gaozu seemed either unwilling or unable to decisively end the conflict.
He couldn't control his own sons.
It seems not effectively. Maybe he was trying to balance them, maybe he favored Jiancheng as the rightful heir, but feared Shimin's power. Whatever the reason, the situation escalated. By the summer of 626 CE, Li Shimin clearly felt his position was untenable.
He believed his life was in danger.
The sources loyal to him certainly portray it that way. Whether it was imminent or not, he recognized a fundamental truth. His military victories meant nothing if Jiancheng became emperor. The moment his father died, he'd likely be neutralized. Or worse.
So he reverted to what he knew best. Decisive, preemptive action. Military strategy applied to politics.
Exactly. He decided to resolve the succession crisis with violence. He planned the ambush at the Xuanwu Gate.
The northern gate to the main palace complex in Shan'an, the main entrance.
Yes. On the morning of July 2nd, 626, Li Shimin and his most trusted followers secretly took up positions near the gate. They somehow ensured that both Li Jiancheng and the younger brother Li Yuanji, who sided with Jiancheng, were summoned to the palace early that morning.
Walking right into a trap.
Precisely. As the brothers rode towards the gate, the ambush was sprung. Chaos. And Li Shimin himself.
He didn't just order it.
No. He personally notched an arrow and shot his older brother, the crown prince Li Jiancheng, dead.
Just wow. Fratricide, face to face.
And the younger brother, Li Yuanji. He tried to escape, but Shimin's men, led by the famous general Yuchi, hunted him down and killed him too.
So within minutes, both his main rivals are eliminated. Brutally efficient.
Shockingly so. But the coup wasn't over. Shimin's troops then seized control of the Xuanwu Gate itself, effectively locking down the palace. It became a military occupation. They had the Emperor Gaozu trapped inside.
What was the emperor doing while his sons were being murdered outside his gate?
Ironically, the accounts say Emperor Gaozu was blissfully unaware, enjoying a boating party on a lake within the palace grounds.
So he finds out afterwards.
He's informed by his ministers, probably prompted by Shimin's faction, that there's been an incident, that Jiancheng and Yuanji are dead, and that Li Shimin's troops control the palace. The message was clear.
You have no choice. Your son is now in charge.
Gaozu understood immediately. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. Within 3 days, he was compelled to issue an edict appointing Li Shimin as the new crown prince.
Making the coup plotter the official heir.
And it didn't stop there. Just 2 months later, Gaozu formally abdicated the throne. Whether entirely willingly or under duress is debated, but the result was the same.
Li Shimin, the architect of the ambush, the killer of his brothers, became Emperor Taizong.
The path was cleared. It was a complete, ruthless, and entirely successful seizure of power. But this is where the paradox truly bites. How does this emperor, born of such violence, become the revered model of wise and just rule?
Right, that's the pivot. He's won the throne through bloodshed. Now he has to rule. And he knows that legitimacy based purely on force is shaky, doesn't he?
He absolutely knows it. The Xuanwu Gate Incident, while successful, was a huge political liability. It shattered Confucian ideals of filial piety and fraternal loyalty. He needed to overwrite that narrative fast.
How? By being the best emperor imaginable?
Essentially, yes. He understood that true lasting power couldn't just rest on fear or military might. It needed the consent, or at least the respect, of the governed, especially the influential scholar official class. He needed to build a new foundation based on competence, stability, and moral authority, or at least the appearance of it.
So the Sage King persona wasn't just a nice title, it was a deliberate political strategy for consolidating power.
I think that's largely right. His reign, the Zhenguan era, which starts right after his ascension, becomes this benchmark for good governance, peace, prosperity, openness to advice. It's remarkably effective.
What were the key elements? What did he actually do that earned him this legendary reputation? It couldn't just be talk.
No, it's concrete policy. I'd break it down into three main pillars.
Yeah.
First, personnel, who he put in power.
Okay.
Second, law, creating a clear, stable, legal framework. And third, consultation, how we gathered advice and made decisions.
Let's take personnel first. He came from the aristocracy, the GuanLong clique. Did he just appoint his old buddies?
That's the fascinating part, no. While he certainly rewarded his loyal followers, he made a conscious effort to broaden recruitment. He significantly expanded and emphasized the imperial examination system.
The famous Chinese civil service exams, testing candidates on merit, not just birth.
Exactly. Now, the system wasn't fully meritocratic yet. Connections still mattered, but Taizong clearly saw the value in bringing talented men, even those from less prominent backgrounds, into government. It strengthened his own position by creating officials loyal directly to the emperor, not just to their aristocratic families.
So using meritocracy to dilute the power of the very clique he belonged to. Clever.
Very. And part of this was seeking out ministers known for their integrity and intellect, even if they had previously opposed him. The most famous example is Wei Zheng.
Ah, Wei Zheng, the man Taizong called his mirror.
Precisely. Wei Zheng had been a loyal advisor to the murdered crown prince, Li Shimin. Taizong not only spared him, but promoted him to high office, specifically valuing his willingness to offer blunt, often harsh criticism.
That takes serious confidence or calculation to empower your former rival's top advisor known for speaking truth to power.
Both, probably. Taizong famously said things like, Wei Zheng points out my faults. He is a mirror reflecting my actions. He understood that he needed honest feedback, not just flattery, to govern well and avoid the mistakes that brought down previous dynasties. This performance of openness was revolutionary.
Okay, so personnel was key. What about the second pillar, the law? You mentioned the Tang Code earlier.
Yes, the Tang Code, or Tang Lu. While finalized shortly after his reign, Taizong sponsored its compilation. This wasn't just another set of rules. It was arguably the most comprehensive, logical, and influential legal code in East Asian history up to that point.
What made it so special?
Its clarity, its structure, its relative leniency compared to earlier codes, and its attempt to create standardized procedures. It covered criminal law, administrative law, procedural law. It provided a predictable framework.
Predictability is huge for stability, right? Less arbitrary rule.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And its influence was immense. It didn't just shape law in China for centuries. It became the foundational model for legal systems in Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. It was like the legal operating system for the entire region.
Wow. Okay, so personnel law, what was the third pillar?
Consultation.
Consultation, and more broadly, effective governance. Taizong made a show of listening to his ministers. He held regular court sessions where policy was debated. He fostered an environment where officials felt they could speak up, at least more than usual.
And this wasn't just about internal policy. It extended to how he ran the empire day to day.
Yes. Fiscal responsibility was a big theme. He tried to keep taxes relatively low, promote agriculture, the bedrock of the economy. On the foreign policy front, he used his military strength pragmatically. He subdued the threatening Eastern Turkic Khaganate early in his reign,
Which secured the northern borders.
and reopened and secured the Silk Roads, leading to a boom in trade and cultural exchange. Chan became one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world. It was a period of relative peace and growing prosperity. And he made sure everyone knew how he did it.
Pretty much. His discussions with ministers, his governing philosophy, his successes, they were all meticulously recorded, eventually compiled into a work called the Zhenguan Zhengyao, or Essentials of Governance of the Zhenguan Era.
Basically, How to Be a Great Emperor by Taizong, his own instruction manual.
That's exactly what it became, a textbook for future rulers, cementing his legacy as the ultimate enlightened despot.
Which brings us right back to where we started. This incredible legacy of good governance, the mirror for emperors, all built by a man who seized power through fratricide and forced his father out. How do we reconcile this? It feels fundamentally contradictory.
It is contradictory.
Yeah.
And maybe the reconciliation is accepting that contradiction. Perhaps figures like Taizong demonstrate that sometimes, maybe often, the path to building something stable and lasting requires actions that are, well, morally compromising, to say the least.
You mean he had to be ruthless within the old system to gain the power needed to change that system?
I think that's a big part of it. He was a product of the Quanlong aristocracy. He understood its power games. He used its methods, including violence and political maneuvering, to reach the top. But once there, he seemed genuinely committed to creating a more stable, less arbitrary, and more effective form of rule, even if that meant gradually reducing the power of the very aristocracy he came from.
So the violence of the Xuanwu Gate, it was the necessary, brutal price of admission to enact his vision of enlightened rule.
From his perspective, almost certainly. And from a purely historical perspective, it worked. The Zhenguan era was remarkably successful. But we also can't ignore the deliberate crafting of his image.
The revision of history we talked about earlier, making his father seem weak, emphasizing his own role.
Exactly. That wasn't just vanity. It was crucial for governance. He needed to transform his political victory, won through blood, into moral legitimacy. By commissioning the official histories, by promoting the Zhenguan Zhengyao, he was actively shaping his legacy in real time, ensuring future generations remembered the Sage Key more clearly than the Kinslayer.
His success as an emperor is undeniable. The Tang Dynasty's golden age owes so much to the foundations he laid. But the methods, they just leave you feeling uneasy.
As they should. It highlights the uncomfortable relationship between political effectiveness and personal morality throughout history. Taizong is maybe the quintessential example of enlightened despotism, achieving a remarkable degree of order, prosperity, and relatively just governance, but through absolute power that was initially seized with utter ruthlessness.
He controlled and ultimately helped dismantle the very aristocratic system that produced him.
Using its own tools against it, in a way.
So it leaves us, and leaves you listening, with a really challenging final thought, I think.
Yeah.
Does true historical greatness, the kind that founds dynasties and defines eras, almost require the founder to be both a brilliant strategist and a ruthless opportunist? Can the stability and peace that follow ever fully wash away the blood spilled to achieve them?
It's the enduring question Taizong's legacy forces us to confront. Can the ends ever truly justify such means? History gives us the results, but the moral judgment, that's much harder.
We're digging into a moment where, founding a dynasty wasn't the end game, it was just the beginning of the fight. 618 AD, Li Yuan takes China, declares the Tang Dynasty. But really, that's just planting a flag in a storm, right?
Absolutely. Planting the flag was, relatively speaking, the easy bit. Surviving the next few years, that was the real challenge. The sources paint this picture of utter fragmentation, warlords everywhere, strong ones with their own armies controlling huge chunks of territory.
Yeah, it wasn't like minor rebels popping up. It was a full-on power vacuum.
Exactly. Think post-Roman Empire Europe. Central control just collapses, and suddenly you have all these powerful regional figures trying to carve out their own permanent kingdoms. It's a brutal game of survival.
And this is the fire that forges Li Shimin. He's a prince, yes, but the political setup is interesting.
His older brother, Li Qiancheng, gets named Crown Prince. That secures the succession line, politically speaking. But it means all the really dangerous make-or-break military campaigns, they fall to Li Shimin, a young guy, brilliant, but still pretty untested on this scale.
So our mission today is really to unpack that transformation. How does this prince become the quote-unquote invincible commander? We need to look at his strategies on the battlefield, his leadership style, that mix of tactical brilliance and, well, serious emotional intelligence, and these huge risks he took.
Yeah, the gambles were enormous, life-or-death stuff constantly. The core puzzle is, how does this young man, facing existential threat after existential threat, develop not just the strategy, but the sheer nerve, the psychological strength, to sweep away all these powerful rivals and unify China in, less than a decade? It's incredible.
Okay, so section 1, learning the hard way. Where does the first major test come from?
Right after taking Chang'an, the capital, the immediate danger isn't actually from the east, the traditional heartland. It's from the west.
The rear flank wasn't secure.
Not at all. You've got these powerful regimes led by Xu Chu and Li Kui. And Xu Chu, specifically, represents the first really critical immediate threat. If they can't secure that western territory, they're constantly looking over their shoulder.
Makes sense. You can't fight east if your back door is open.
Precisely. So the Tang forces march out, Li Shimin leading them. He's heading towards Kaohsiung, probably expecting his first big, decisive win as the main commander.
But history throws a curveball. He gets there ready for battle, and boom, he gets sick. Malaria, the records say.
Yeah, incapacitated. which is, a huge problem when you're the commander. His authority is suddenly shaky just because of a fever.
So what does he do?
He gives very clear orders to his key subordinates, Yin Kaishan and Lu Wenqing. He tells them, hold the line, stay defensive, wait until I'm back on my feet, do not engage. He understood you don't risk everything when the command isn't fully functional.
Sensible advice, but pride, impatience.
Impatience, definitely. And maybe pride. Xu Chu, the enemy commander, was smart. He starts taunting the Tang lines, insults, challenges, trying to provoke them.
Psychological warfare.
Textbook. And it works. Yin Kaishan and Lu Wenqing, they get fed up. Maybe they felt insulted, maybe just antsy. They ignore Li Shimin's direct orders. They advance.
Straight into a trap.
Straight into an ambush Xu Chu had waiting for them. The result, catastrophic. A huge defeat for the Tang, heavy losses, and a massive blow to morale. All because the commanders on the ground broke discipline.
Imagine being Li Shimin, stuck in his tent, probably feverish, hearing the battle go wrong, knowing his orders were disobeyed.
Utterly devastating. His first major independent command ends in failure and humiliation. It's a terrible start.
But the sources suggest this failure was actually beneficial. How does that work?
Well, winning all the time can make a young commander arrogant, right? Complacent. But a failure like this, especially one where you can pinpoint the mistake, the impatience, the breakdown in command it forces you to learn, it builds experience, sure, but more importantly, it builds that psychological toughness.
So the lesson wasn't about tactics, it was about command discipline.
Exactly. He learned that sometimes the biggest danger isn't the enemy outside, it's the lack of patience or discipline within your own ranks. That lesson, learned the hard way at Kaohsiung, was fundamental.
And then just to add another layer of unpredictability.
Right. Just as Xue Xu is celebrating his massive victory, he gets overly excited, maybe has a stroke or something. The sources mention a possible cerebral hemorrhage, and he just dies right after the battle.
Wow. Talk about a sudden shift.
Instantaneously, power passes to his son, Xue Yangku. But for Li Shimin, the lesson from Kaohsiung is already burned in. Control your own side first. Don't let impatience or provocation dictate your strategy. And that lesson is about to be tested again very quickly.
Okay, so Section 2. The patient strike. Li Shimin gets a second chance against the son, Xianku.
He does. They face off at Qianshui Yuan. And what you see now is a completely different commander. He's recovered, obviously, but there's this newfound calmness, this composure, this kind of remarkable for his age, especially after that first defeat.
But his officers are probably still smarting from the loss, right? Eager to get revenge.
Oh, absolutely. They're pushing him. Let's attack. Let's hit them now. Avenge Kaohsiung. It's the same impatience bubbling up.
And Li Shimin?
He says no. Flat out refuses. Overrules the consensus. That's a key sign of strong leadership, being able to resist that internal pressure. He recognized his army's morale was still fragile. They were anxious, maybe too eager for revenge. Rushing in again could be another disaster.
So his strategy is wait again.
But this time, it's strategic waiting. He decides to wear the enemy down first. He initiates a standoff. For several dozen days, the sources say, just sits there, defensively strong.
That sounds incredibly disciplined, holding back an army that wants to fight.
It is. This isn't just passive defense, though. It's offensive waiting. The goal is to bleed the enemy's supplies, exhaust their patience, break their spirit. Time becomes the weapon.
This really reminds me of the Fabian strategy against Hannibal in Roman history. Avoid the big battle, grind them down.
That's a perfect parallel. Sabius Maximus understood it, and so did Li Shimin. Logistics and psychology. He knew Xue Yankuo's army sitting out there day after day facing an enemy who wouldn't fight on their terms. They'd get frustrated, supplies would dwindle, discipline might slip.
Maintaining discipline in his own camp during that long wait must have been tough too. How did he manage that?
That's the real trick of the Fabian approach. It suggests he'd already instilled incredible discipline and loyalty. He likely kept them busy drills, scouting, visible preparations, keeping them focused, making sure they understood the plan wasn't just waiting, it was preparing for the decisive moment.
So he waits and waits until he senses the moment is right.
Exactly. He judges that the enemy's morale is cracking, their readiness is low. Then, and only then, does he make his move.
How does he execute it?
It's brilliant. He sends a smaller force on a flanking maneuver, sort of drawing the enemy's main attention that way, creates a bit of confusion, maybe exposes a weakness, and then bam. The main Tang force launches a sudden, overwhelming assault. Fast, decisive, lethal.
It's that phrase the sources use, isn't it? Still as a maiden, Swift as a fleeing hare.
That sums it up perfectly. The absolute calm and patience of the maiden, waiting, observing. Then the explosive speed and decisiveness of the fleeing hare once the moment arrives.
And the result?
Total victory. Shui Jianku's army collapses. He's captured, later executed, and just like that, the entire Western threat is neutralized. The Tang rear is secure. Now finally, Li Shimin can turn his attention east towards the real centers of power in Hotung and Honan.
Okay, Section 3, winning hearts and minds. So the focus shifts east, but the threats don't get any smaller.
If anything, they get bigger. The next crisis is huge. You have these warlords, Lu Chao and Song Qingkang, and the crucial factor here is they're not acting alone. They're backed by the Turks.
The Eastern Turks. That changes everything. It's not just an internal squabble anymore.
Exactly. This is an international conflict, potentially existential for the Tang. And they strike right at the heart. They capture Taiyuan.
Taiyuan. That's the city where the Tang Rebellion started, their home base.
Precisely. Losing Taiyuan sends shockwaves through the Tang leadership in Chang'an. It's a massive strategic and symbolic blow. And adding insult to injury, Li Shimin's own brother, Li Yuanqi, was supposed to defend it, and he failed miserably.
So the dynasty looks like it's teetering again.
It really does. And once again, who steps up? Li Shimin, he has to be the anchor, the one who holds things together. He manages to defeat Liu Chou and Song Qingkang, forcing them to flee. Militarily is another vital win.
But you said the real prize from this campaign wasn't just the victory.
Right. The biggest gain wasn't territory, it was personnel. Specifically, the capture and crucially the recruitment of this legendary general, Yuchi Jingde.
Ah, the mightiest warrior in the realm. The sources practically treat him like a superhero.
And maybe he was, in battlefield terms. We need to be clear here for anyone who knows the later novels, like Sui Tang Yanni, the character Li Yuanpa, often shown as the ultimate warrior, mostly fiction. The historical person, Li Yuanpa, died young, never led troops. The real, unstoppable force of that era was Yuchi Jingde. Think Lancelot in Arthurian legend, or Achilles in the Iliad, that kind of figure.
Okay, so capturing him is a coup. But getting a guy like that, fiercely loyal to his previous masters, to switch sides and fight for you, that takes something special.
This is where we see Li Shimin's EQ, his emotional intelligence, really come to the fore. Yuchi Jingde is captured, along with other officers who fought against the Tang. What do Li Shimin's own generals advise?
Execute them, or at least lock them up. Too dangerous to keep around.
Exactly. That's the standard playbook, right?
Yep.
Eliminate potential threats, especially powerful ones who've proven their loyalty elsewhere. His officers are basically saying, don't be stupid, Prince. These guys will turn on you the first chance they get.
Seems like pragmatic advice for a dynasty still fighting for its life. Why didn't Li Shimin take it?
Because he understood something deeper about loyalty. Fear might ensure compliance for a while, but genuine trust, freely given, that inspires true devotion. He completely rejects the advice. Instead, he decides to demonstrate absolute, unconditional trust.
How? What does he do?
He invokes this powerful, ancient concept, Tuisin Shifu.
Tuisin Shifu, we mentioned the translation, to take out one's heart and place it in another's stomach.
Wow. It signifies total sincerity, holding nothing back. He's consciously modeling himself after great magnanimous rulers of the past, like Emperor Xuanwu of Han. And he doesn't just say it, he proves it.
How?
In the most dramatic way possible. He orders Yuchi Jingde's tent to be pitched right next to his own.
Wait, next to his personal quarters?
Right next door. And not only that, he has their personal bodyguards quartered together, basically saying, I trust you so completely, I'm putting my life literally right next to yours.
That's insane, or insanely brilliant. Placing the most dangerous captive warrior inches away while you sleep.
It's a staggering display of confidence. But think about it from Yuchi Jingde's perspective. He's expecting execution or prison or suspicion. Instead, he gets this incredible gesture of respect, honor, and absolute faith.
It bypasses all the usual calculations of risk and reward.
Completely. And it works. Yuchi Jingde is won over, not by threats, but by trust. He becomes utterly unshakably loyal to Li Shimin from that moment on. He saves Li Shimin's life on the battlefield multiple times later and plays an absolutely critical role in the Xuanwu Gate Incident, which secures Li Shimin's path to the throne. That move, that understanding of human psychology, that's peak leadership.
Amazing. Okay, so the West is secure, a legendary warrior is recruited. Now, Section 4, the high-stakes gamble in the Central Plains.
This is the main event, the strategic heartland. And it's dominated by two major players left standing against the Tang. First, Wang Shicheng,
Right, the former Sui general holding the fortress city of Luoyang.
Exactly. And Luoyang is crucial. It was the eastern capital under the previous Sui dynasty, heavily fortified, huge strategic importance, controlling the central plains. Wang Shicheng got control after the Wakang army under Li Mi basically imploded.
Li Mi, talented but flawed.
Very talented, very ambitious, part of the elite GuanLong clique. But he made a critical error. He attacked the retreating Sui Imperial Guard when he should have just let them pass. He won, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. It exhausted his army, wounded key generals like Qin Chung, and left him vulnerable. Wang Shicheng just swept in and picked up the pieces.
So Wang controls Luoyang. Who's the other big player?
That's Du Sheni, up in Hopei, north of the Yellow River. He leads the Xia regime. Very different background, a peasant leader, apparently quite humble and honest, but commanded immense loyalty and a massive army. Very formidable.
So the board is set. Li Teng versus Wang Shicheng in Luoyang and Tu Xinti in Hopei.
That's the final showdown. Li Shi knows Luoyang is the key. If he takes Luoyang, he breaks the back of the opposition, so he lays siege to it. A massive undertaking.
But Luoyang is built to withstand sieges.
Exactly. Wang Shicheng knows he probably can't beat the Tang alone in the long run, but he can hold out for a long time, so he does the logical thing. He sends messengers pleading for help from Tu Tiante.
And he uses that famous line.
He does. The idiom Chun Huang Qian. If the lips are gone, the teeth will be cold.
Meaning, if I, Wang, the lips fall, you, too, the teeth are exposed and next.
Precisely. It's a classic appeal to mutual self-interest in the face of a common enemy. And Tu Tiante buys it. He recognizes the threat that Tang posed to all independent rulers, so he mobilizes his entire Xia army, tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of troops, and marches south to break the siege of Luoyang.
Oh boy. This is the nightmare scenario for Li Shimin.
Absolute nightmare. He's stuck besieging a fortress, probably making slow progress, and now a gigantic relief army is coming up behind him. He's about to be crushed in a pincer movement. A classic two-front war trap.
What do his generals say? Surely now they advise retreat.
Overwhelmingly, yes. The sources are clear. Pretty much everyone in the Tang command stack says, we have to get out of here, lift the siege, pull back, deal with Tu Shanti first, then maybe come back for Luoyang later. It's the only logical, militarily sound option.
Because fighting both at once is suicide.
Generally, yes. History is littered with examples of armies being destroyed in two-front situations. Think about Napoleon's struggles later in Europe trying to fight everywhere at once, ultimately doomed him. Retreating and fighting them sequentially is the safe play.
But Li Shimin, he doesn't do safe plays, does he?
Not this time. He overrides everyone. He refuses to retreat. Instead, he sees this crisis not just as a danger, but as the ultimate opportunity.
Opportunity? How?
His thinking is pure strategic genius, mixed with incredible nerve. He basically says, no, we fight now, we finish this in one go. The phrase is, Pichi Kong Yu, I stake everything on this one stroke.
What's the logic? Why is fighting now better than retreating?
Because if he retreats, what happens? Wang Shicheng gets resupplied and stronger inside Luoyang. Tu Tiante marches home a hero, his army intact and confident. Then Li Shimin has to face both of them again later, probably separately, in possibly even stronger positions.
Whereas now,
both his mortal enemies are in the field, within reach. It's incredibly dangerous, yes, but it's also the only chance to eliminate both threats simultaneously. It's a massive gamble, but the potential payoff is total victory. It requires unbelievable courage and faith in his troops.
Okay, Section 5. The decisive battle at Hulao Pass. He takes a gamble. What's the plan?
He can't abandon the siege entirely, or Wang Shicheng will sally out. So he leaves a portion of his army under his brother Li Yanqi to keep Luoyang pinned down.
The same brother who lost Taiyuan. Risky.
Maybe, but necessary. Li Shimin himself takes only a small elite force, just a few thousand cavalry, to confront Tu Tiante's massive incoming army.
A few thousand against potentially hundreds of thousands. What troops did he take?
The best of the best. His Xuanwu, the Black Armor Army. These guys were his elite heavy cavalry. Think special forces. Distinctive black armor, best training, best equipment. Always held in reserve for the decisive moment.
Like Alexander's companion cavalry or Napoleon's Old Guard, the force you commit when everything is on the line?
Exactly that kind of unit. Their mission isn't just to fight, it's to break the enemy at the critical point. And their target location is Hulao Pass.
Why Hulao Pass?
Geography is key here. Hulao Pass is a natural choke point, a narrow passage. It's described as the throat leading to Luoyang. If Li Shimin can seize and hold that pass, he controls access to Luoyang from the east.
Like Thermopylae, forcing the larger army to fight in a confined space where numbers count for less.
Precisely. It neutralizes Tu Tiande's numerical advantage.
Yeah.
So Li Shimin races ahead with the Black Armor Army and secures Hulao Pass before Tu arrives.
Okay, he holds the pass, but he's still massively outnumbered. A straight fight is impossible.
So what does he do? He falls back on his signature tactic, the one he perfected at Qianshuoyuan.
The patient standoff.
Exactly. He digs in at Hulao Pass and just waits. Another standoff lasting several dozen days, using the terrain, the discipline of his elite troops, and psychological pressure, waiting for Tu Tiante to make a mistake.
Does Tu Tiante have other options?
He does. And this is a crucial point. His advisors apparently suggested a brilliant alternative. They said, don't attack Li Shimin here in the pass. It's a trap. Instead, use the Wei in Circle's Chao strategy.
Meaning?
Bypass Li Shimin entirely. Leave a small force to keep him occupied, but take the main army on a wide flanking march, straight towards the Tang capital, Chang'an.
Whoa, that would have forced Li Shimin's hand completely. He'd have to abandon Hulao, abandon the siege of Luoyang, and race back west to save the capital.
It would have been strategically devastating for the Tang. Luoyang would be relieved without a fight. But Tu Tiante doesn't take the advice.
Why not? It sounds like a winning move.
Sources suggest a couple of reasons. One, he was apparently being heavily bribed and lobbied by Wang Shizhong's envoys, who were desperate for a direct, immediate relief of Luoyang. Two, maybe arrogance, or just impatience. He chose the direct confrontation.
He fell into the same trap of impatience Li Shimin had learned to exploit.
He did. He brought his massive army up to the pass, expecting a quick breakthrough, and instead found himself stuck in this frustrating standoff. Day after day, his army is getting tired, hungry, demoralized, and Li Shimin is just waiting, watching.
Until the moment is right.
Until the moment is right. One day, seeing Tu Tiante's army looking lax, maybe letting their guard down during the heat of the day or while preparing food, Li Shimin gives the order.
The Black Armor Army attacks.
Like lightning. A sudden, concentrated, devastating charge led by Li Shimin himself, the sheer shock and force of the elite cavalry hitting the unprepared Xia lines. It's catastrophic for Tu.
His huge army just breaks.
It disintegrates. Panic spreads. The lines collapse. Tu Tiante himself is captured in the chaos. The entire Xia regime, this massive military power, is effectively destroyed in a single, brilliant cavalry charge.
Unbelievable. The gamble paid off. He beat the relief force.
And then comes the final act. Li Shimin doesn't even need to assault Luoyang now. He marches back to the city walls, victorious.
And parades the captured Tu Tiante.
Exactly. He parades the captured Xia leader in a prison cart right in front of the walls of Luoyang. Wang Shicheng, inside the city, sees his only hope for rescue, his powerful ally, utterly defeated and humiliated. The psychological blow is total. Wang Shicheng breaks down, realizes it's hopeless, and surrenders the city.
Wow. In one single campaign, by taking that massive two-front risk, Li Shimin eliminated both his major rivals and secured the Central Plains.
It's arguably one of the most decisive and strategically brilliant campaigns in all of Chinese history. Patience, discipline, exploiting enemy psychology, elite troops used at the decisive point, and unbelievable personal courage from the commander.
So let's wrap this up. The outro. Summing up his achievement.
It's hard to overstate Li Shimin's contribution. He basically won the Tang Dynasty on the battlefield. He secured the West, stabilized the regime during the Turkish crisis, recruited key talent like Yuchi Jingde through sheer force of personality, and then systematically eliminated the most powerful warlords in the East through brilliant strategy and calculated risk.
By the time the Zhenguan era begins, his father's reign technically, but really his era.
Right. By the second year of Zhenguan, the last significant rival, Lian Shitu, is dealt with. The unification is complete. The Tang Dynasty is secure, largely thanks to Li Shimin's military campaigns over the previous, 6 or 7 years.
But there's a kind of tragic irony here, isn't there? His very success, his military power, the intense loyalty he inspired, that becomes a problem in itself.
That's the difficult truth. His unparalleled success on the battlefield made him immensely powerful, arguably more powerful than the Crown Prince, his elder brother. The loyalty of the army, especially generals like Yuchi Jingde, whom he personally won over, was to him.
And that imbalance of power, created by his own military genius, leads directly to the next major internal conflict.
It lays the groundwork for the Xuanwu Gate Incident, the bloody confrontation between Li Shimin and his brothers for control of the dynasty. He won the war for the empire, but his very success meant he then had to fight for the throne itself. a fascinating and perhaps inevitable consequence of his own greatness.
So we've seen Li Shimin's genius relied on maybe 3 key things. Resilience, learning from that first awful defeat. Patience, mastering the art of the strategic wait. And trust, that incredible ability to win loyalty by giving it unconditionally. For leaders listening today, facing their own crises, maybe not on a battlefield, but significant nonetheless, which of those 3, resilience, patience, or trust, do you think is the hardest quality to master and maybe the most underrated?
That's a great question to reflect on. Resilience keeps you going, patience lets you choose the right moment, but trust. Trust is how you build a team that makes victory possible. Which is most vital probably depends on the specific crisis.
Today, we're trying to get our heads around, well, one of history's great paradoxes, really.
It really is. We're talking about a figure who seized power in just about the most brutal way imaginable. Fratricide, political assassination.
Exactly. Li Shimin, who became Emperor Taizong, he literally killed his brothers to get the throne.
He did. A calculated, ruthless act. And yet, this is the fascinating part, he then goes on to become maybe the definition of an enlightened sage king in Chinese history.
It's jarring, isn't it? How do you reconcile the ruthless killer with the founder of the celebrated Golden Age, the reign of Zhenguan?
Well, that's what we're going to dive into. We need to understand the structural pressures that we're building, the context that pushed him towards that violence.
The Machiavellian moment, as you called it earlier.
Precisely. That cold calculation, but then also the incredible sustained effort over 23 years to basically legitimize that initial act, to wash away the stain through unprecedented good governance.
And for you listening, this isn't just ancient history. It's a classic clash playing out merit versus birthright, duty versus ambition.
And it really highlights some core differences, I think, between how Eastern and Western political philosophy have thought about power, legitimacy, and, how you keep rulers in check.
So where do we start? To understand Li Shimin's drastic actions, we need to look at the situation his father created, right?
Absolutely. The roots of this crisis go right back to the founder of the Tang Dynasty, Emperor Gaogouli. Yeah. He basically set up an impossible dynamic between his sons.
Okay, so Gaogouli, the first emperor, he stuck to tradition in one sense, primogeniture. The eldest son gets the title.
Right. So Li Qianzhang, the oldest, was named crown prince. That's the de jure part, the legal inheritance sorted.
But then Gaogouli completely undercut him, didn't he, in practice?
He did, massively.
Yeah.
While Qianzhang had the title, he was, let's say, kept away from the real action, especially the critical military campaigns needed to actually found and secure the dynasty.
So the crown prince is doing,
Yeah.
what, minor stuff?
Pretty much. Our sources mention him quelling a rebellion led by Liu Heita. But that was about it. He wasn't given the chance to build that battlefield credibility, that deep loyalty from the troops, which is so crucial, especially in a new dynasty forged through war.
Meanwhile, his younger brother, Li Shimin.
Oh, well, he was the one getting his hands dirty. Gaogouli assigned him all the heavy lifting, consolidating the empire, fighting the major warlords, cleaning up the remnants of the previous Sui dynasty.
His role was described as being of utmost importance, wasn't it? He was the military engine, the guy actually winning the empire on the ground.
Exactly. He was the operational genius, the charismatic general. And this, you can imagine, created a huge imbalance, psychologically, politically.
How could it not? You've got Li Shimin, covered in glory, commander of the victorious armies, clearly the most capable leader.
And he's supposed to just accept that he can't be emperor simply because he wasn't born first. It goes against, well, common sense in a way, especially in that context.
It's not just sour grapes, is it? It feels like a fundamental structural flaw in the succession plan. The court, the army, they could see who the real power player was.
Absolutely. And think about it from the soldier's perspective. You've risked your life following this brilliant general, Li Shimin, to carve out an empire, and then the top job goes to his brother, who hasn't really proven himself in the same way. That's a tough pill to swallow.
And history had already shown this was a dangerous path, right? This wasn't the first time this dynamic had played out.
Not at all. It's almost uncanny how closely the Tang situation mirrored the crisis that brought down the previous dynasty, the Sui.
Oh, right. Emperor Yangti.
Exactly. Yangti wasn't the eldest son either. He seized the throne from his older brother, Yang.
Yeah.
And why?
Military success.
Precisely. Yangti had led successful campaigns, conquering the southern Chen dynasty, defending the borders against the Turks. He used that military prestige, that de facto power, to argue that his brother's birthright claim was less important than his proven ability. It's a recurring theme, military merit challenging legal tradition.
So, Emperor Kasu, Li Shimin's father, he should have seen this coming. He should have learned from the Sui collapse.
You'd think so. He really should have made a clear, decisive choice early on. Either fully empower Li Qiansheng, give him real military commands, let him earn that respect, or maybe recognize Li Shimin's contribution and change the succession.
But he didn't. He just sort of wavered.
He did. His attitude was ambiguous. Sources suggest he was fundamentally biased towards the legal heir, Qiansheng, maybe out of principle, maybe just habit. But crucially, he underestimated the sheer ambition and, frankly, the ruthlessness of his second son. He didn't grasp how dangerous it was to have the de facto power the army controlled by someone other than the de jure heir.
It sounds like a classic succession crisis formula.
It absolutely is. You see parallels elsewhere. Think about England's Wars of the Roses, centuries later. It's often born from that same fundamental conflict.
You have the legal heir, the one with the papers, the de jure claim.
Li Qiansheng, in this case, based purely on birth order.
And then you have the powerful challenger, the one with the real muscle, the de facto power.
Li Shimin, controlling the military, backed by loyal, battle-hardened commanders, possessing this string of glorious victories.
And when the person at the top, the king or emperor, fails to resolve that tension decisively,
the whole system becomes unstable. It's like a ticking time bomb. Eventually, something has to give. Legality confronts reality.
And reality usually has the bigger army.
And Kaosu's wavering didn't just fail to defuse the situation, it actually made things worse. It basically encouraged both sons to prepare for the inevitable conflict.
Because if dad won't choose, they'll have to force his hand.
Exactly. So what do we see? Both Li Qiansheng, the crown prince, and Li Shimin start secretly building up their own loyal armed forces, right there in the capital city.
Private armies, effectively, under the emperor's nose.
Pretty much. Recruiting loyalists, stockpiling weapons, probably. The tension is ratcheting up. Everyone knows something has to break.
And then comes the trigger incident, the spark that lights the fuse.
Right. A subordinate of the crown prince, Li Qiansheng, a guy named Yang Wenkan, he gets caught recruiting soldiers out in Qingzhou.
Which is a huge deal, right? That's not just bending the rules.
Oh, it's treason. Recruiting troops without imperial authorization. That's a capital crime. It looks like a direct move by the crown prince's faction to build up military power outside the capital, maybe for a future move.
So how does the emperor, Kaozu, react?
He's reportedly furious. This is open defiance. He needs it shut down fast. And who does he turn to?
Let me guess. Li Shimin.
Of course. He orders Li Shimin to lead the punitive expedition against Yang Wenkan, which, again, implicitly acknowledges who the real military troubleshooter is.
Okay, so Shimin is sent off to put down this rebellion started by his brother's guy. But there's a twist, isn't there? A promise.
A huge one. This is where the betrayal really crystallizes things. Before Li Shimin marches off, his father, Emperor Kaozu, apparently verbally promises him the title of crown prince upon his victorious return.
Wow, so this is it, the recognition he's been fighting for. Merit finally trumping birthright.
It seems that way. This is everything Li Shimin wanted. Official designation as the heir. So he goes off, does his duty, crushes Yang Wenkan's forces, fulfills his side of the bargain.
But things happen back at court while he's gone.
Indeed. Politics in the shadows. The crown prince, Li Qiansheng, gets wind of this promise, or maybe just senses the danger. Advised by a very sharp strategist, Wei Cheng, remember that name? He becomes important later. Qiansheng rushes to his father.
It plays the victim card.
Completely. Puts on a big show, weeping, begging forgiveness, insisting he had nothing to do with Yang Wenkan's actions, that it was all slander orchestrated by his enemies. Meaning Li Shimin, of course.
And the emperor buys it.
Hook, line, and sinker. In what you can only describe as a moment of profound weakness, or maybe just deep-seated preference for his eldest, Kaozu forgives Li Qiansheng. He completely reverses his decision.
So when Li Shimin comes riding back, victorious, expecting to be named crown prince,
he finds his brother completely exonerated, the promise vanished into thin air, and his entire military effort basically nullified politically.
The sense of betrayal must have been immense. And the danger, too, right? Now his brother knew he was aiming for the throne.
Absolutely. That promise, even though broken, put everything out in the open. From this point forward, it's no longer just rivalry. It's an existential fight. Only one side can survive. The factions harden completely.
So let's map out the teams. You've got the establishment side.
Right. Led by the legal heir, Crown Prince Li Qiansheng. And significantly, their younger brother, Li Yuanqi, throws his lot in with the Crown Prince, siding with the existing power structure.
Okay, so two brothers against one. and Li Shimin's team.
His camp was formidable. It's essentially his personal military command structure brought into the political arena. The core of his support came from the Prince of Qin's mansion, that was his title.
Made up of
two key groups. First, the strategists, the political brains. Changsun Wuqi, who was also his brother-in-law Fang Xuanling, and Tu Zhuhui. These guys were managing the court connections, the intelligence, the planning.
And second, the muscle.
Exactly. The legendary warriors. The guys who had fought shoulder to shoulder with him, whose loyalty was personal and absolute. Names like Qin Cheng, Cheng Yaoqian, the incredibly fearsome Yuchi Jingde, Yin Kaishan. These weren't just soldiers. They were his comrades, his band of brothers. Their fortunes were tied to his.
So he had this tight-knit group of brilliant strategists and utterly loyal, battle-hardened warriors.
Yes, and that gave him the confidence that if he decided to make a move, a decisive, violent move, his core team would follow him without question. The stage was well and truly set for a bloody resolution.
And that resolution came swiftly, didn't it? The infamous Xuanwu Gate Incident. What pushed Li Shimin to finally act?
He received intelligence, very specific, very alarming intelligence. It suggested his brothers, Li Qiancheng and Li Yuanqi, were about to make their own move.
What was the plan?
The story goes that they concocted a pretext needing reinforcements for the border defense against the Turks, a constant threat. Using this excuse, they planned to have Li Shimin's best generals officially transferred out of the capital.
Separating him from his core military strength.
Exactly. And then the final step, invite these generals to a farewell banquet and assassinate them there. Decapitate Li Shimin's command structure in one fell swoop.
Leaving Li Shimin isolated and vulnerable?
Completely. Whether this intelligence was perfectly accurate or slightly exaggerated by Shimin's faction doesn't entirely matter. He believed it, or at least he acted on it. He saw it as the final move. His life and the lives of his most loyal men were on the line. He had to strike first.
A preemptive strike. So the date is set, 4th day, 6th month, 9th year of the Wu Tai era. What happens?
It's incredibly planned, very precise. Li Shimin makes a critical move. He bribes the commander of the Imperial Guard detachment stationed at the Xuanwu Gate.
The northern gate of the imperial city, a key strategic point.
The absolute key point for controlling access to the palace. With the commander on his side, Li Shimin, along with just 9 of his most trusted warriors fully armed, ready for combat hide inside the gatehouse. They lay in ambush.
And his brothers.
Li Qiansheng and Li Yuanqi receive a summons, supposedly from their father the emperor, requesting their presence at the palace for an early morning meeting. Standard procedure, seemingly. They ride toward the Xuanwu Gate, completely unaware.
Walking right into it.
Literally. As they pass through the gate, Li Shimin gives the signal. He personally steps out, draws his bow, takes aim at his eldest brother.
And kills Li Qiancheng with a single arrow, just like that.
Just like that. Decisive. Brutal. The crown prince is dead.
Chaos must have erupted. What about the other brother, Li Yuanqi?
He panics, turns his horse, tries to flee back the way he came, but then this almost bizarre detail happens. His horse apparently shies or stumbles near a tree, and he gets knocked off by a low-hanging branch.
A moment of vulnerability.
Enough for Li Shimin to catch up on foot. They end up grappling on the ground. It gets incredibly personal, incredibly vicious. Li Yuanqi, though apparently unarmed or having lost his weapon, actually tries to strangle Li Shimin, using the bowstring from Shimin's own bow.
Wow, the sheer desperation.
But then, reinforcements arrive for Shimin. The warrior, Yuchi Tian, rides up.
The heavy hitter.
The heaviest. He reportedly lets out this huge battle roar designed to demoralize any nearby guards loyal to the brothers, and then he kills Li Yuanqi, finishes him off.
So both brothers are dead within minutes. But there were troops outside the gate, weren't there? Loyal to the crown prince.
Yes, a fight had broken out between the small group of the brothers and Shimin's ambush party, and likely guards were getting involved. But Yuchi Qingti makes the move that ends it decisively.
What does he do?
He cuts off the head of the dead crown prince, Li Qiancheng, climbs the gate tower, and throws it down to the forces fighting below.
A horrifying, unmistakable signal.
Instantaneous impact. Seeing their leader's severed head. The crown prince's forces just broke. They scattered. Any resistance collapsed. The coup, in terms of military action, was over very quickly.
And then, the confrontation with the emperor?
Yes. Li Shimin and his co-conspirators, reportedly still covered in blood, weapons in hand, marched straight into the palace to see their father, Emperor Cao Tu.
What can the old emperor even do at this point? His chosen heir is dead, his other son is dead, and the victor controls the palace gates.
He's completely outmaneuvered. He's essentially prisoner. And he seems to recognize this immediately. He makes this very telling statement using a classical allusion. He says he suffered from the shuttle-throwing confusion tuchu chihua.
Meaning?
It refers to an old story about a mother who initially trusts her son, but after hearing repeated rumors and slander about him committing murder, even though it was someone else with the same name, she eventually believes the lies and flees in panic, metaphorically throwing down her shuttle at the loom.
So Kaozu is saying he wrongly listened to slander against Li Shimin, that he failed to trust his loyal son.
Precisely. It's a formal, if indirect, admission of his own failure as a ruler and a father. He's acknowledging that his indecisiveness, his willingness to listen to plots against Shimin, caused this tragedy. And, critically, it signals his complete submission to the new reality. Li Shimin is now in charge.
From a purely political analysis standpoint, this is brutal but effective.
It is the absolute textbook Machiavellian moment. Machiavelli argued that sometimes a ruler must use cruelty swiftly and decisively to secure power and prevent greater, longer-lasting chaos, like a civil war.
So the argument is this quick, bloody coup, horrible as it was, might have saved the new Tang Dynasty from tearing itself apart in a prolonged conflict between the brothers.
That's the cold logic, yes. Li Shimin chose what he likely saw as the most efficient path to stability, even if it was morally reprehensible. He prioritized the survival and consolidation of the state over filial piety or traditional ethics.
But the ruthlessness didn't stop at the gate, did it? There was a chilling aftermath.
No, it didn't. And this is where the efficiency argument gets very uncomfortable. Almost immediately after securing the palace, Li Shimin personally led troops to his dead brother's mansions.
Why?
To eliminate any potential future rivals. He ordered the execution of his own nephews, Li Qiancheng's and Li Yuanqi's young sons. Every single one.
Killing children, his own kid.
Yes. This wasn't about the immediate coup anymore. This was about ensuring no claimant, no focus for revenge or rebellion could possibly emerge in the future. Utter consolidation of power.
And there's that other detail about Lady Young.
Ah, yes. Amidst this systematic killing, sources mention that Li Shimin noticed one of his brother Li Yuanqi's consorts, Lady Young. He thought she was beautiful. And ordered her to be taken to his own residence. She later became one of his consorts.
So in the middle of ordering the deaths of his nephews, he's also claiming the spoils of war, so to speak.
It paints a terrifying picture, doesn't it? The sheer coldness, the decisiveness that encompasses both statecraft and personal desire, all in the same moment. He had seized the throne and the path was soaked in blood.
Okay, wait, stop. Fratricide, nephew murder, taking your dead brother's consort. This is monstrous. How on earth do you pivot from that to being remembered as a sage king? It seems impossible.
It does seem impossible. And it wasn't instant. It wasn't weeks. It was a conscious, deliberate project that spanned his entire 23-year reign.
So he takes the throne formally.
Well, a few months later, in the 9th month of that same year, 626 AD, he formally ascends, beginning the reign of Zhenguan. And that name itself is significant.
Zhenguan, what does it mean?
Something like corrected view or visionary governance. It signals his intent right from the start. I'm here to fix things, to rule wisely, to establish a new standard.
So the theory is he knew his rise to power was illegitimate, that it carried this massive historical stain.
Oh, absolutely. He was acutely aware of it. And he seemed to resolve that the only way to overcome that stain, to legitimize his rule in the eyes of history and his subjects, was through exceptional performance. He had to be so good, so effective, so wise, that people would eventually forgive or at least accept how he got there.
He turned his moral deficit into the driving motivation for his reign.
Precisely. He had to transform himself, or at least his public persona, from the ruthless killer of Xuanwu Gate into a model of humility, openness, and justice. He needed to prove, through actions, that the state was demonstrably better off under his rule than it would have been otherwise.
Is there a parallel for this kind of reputation laundering through governance?
There's a really striking one in Western history, Augustus, the first Roman emperor.
How so?
Well, Augustus, originally Octavian, also rose to supreme power through brutal civil wars, bloody purges, prescription lists, basically, eliminating all his rivals, ruthless consolidation.
Right, not exactly a clean start.
Yeah, not at all. But once he achieved sole power, his entire reign was dedicated to crafting this image of himself as the princeps, the first citizen, the restorer of the republic. He ushered in the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. It was a massive, decades-long project to recast himself from factional warlord to the father of the empire.
So Chen Quan was Li Shimin's Pax Sinica project. His way of proving the usurpation was ultimately justified by the results.
Exactly. It was a grand strategic effort to demonstrate that his rule, however questionably obtained, brought stability, order, and good governance that benefited everyone.
And what did this golden age actually look like? Was it about, like, massive economic boom?
That's an important clarification. Chen Quan wasn't necessarily the absolute peak of Tang economic prosperity or infrastructure. Actually, the previous Sui dynasty, under Emperor Yangti, the one who got overthrown, probably reached higher peaks in terms of, say, canal building and sheer wealth generation.
So what defined Chen Quan's success then?
It was more about recovery, stability, and importantly, good governance. After the turmoil of the Sui collapse and the Tang founding wars, people needed a break. Taizong focused on social stability, keeping taxes relatively low, ensuring a reasonably efficient and less corrupt bureaucracy. It was about recuperation and building a solid foundation.
But there was a major external success, too, wasn't there, militarily?
Oh, absolutely. This was crucial for his legitimacy. Very early in his reign, around the third or fourth year, he scored a massive decisive victory against the Eastern Turkic Khaganate.
The Turks to the north, always a major threat.
Always. And Taizong didn't just defeat them, he crushed them. He captured their leader, the Chili Khagan. This wasn't just a border skirmish, it was a fundamental shift in the balance of power across East Asia.
And this victory led to something unprecedented, didn't it? A new title.
Yes, this is huge. Following this victory, the various tribal chieftains of the steppe regions, the nomadic peoples, jointly acclaimed Li Shimin not just as Emperor of China, but as Ting Kehan.
Heavenly Khagan, what does that signify?
It means they recognized him as their supreme leader too, the Khagan of Khagans. He wasn't just the son of heaven ruling the settled agricultural civilization of China. He was now also the accepted overlord of the nomadic steppe world.
So he became emperor of both worlds, in a sense.
Exactly. This dual title massively expanded his sphere of influence and his legitimacy. It projected an image of universal rule, encompassing both the Chinese heartland and the vast surrounding territories. For someone who took the throne through internal strife, achieving this kind of external universal recognition was incredibly powerful politically. It helped cement the Tang Dynasty's dominance and his own position.
Okay, so Taizong has this goal. Legitimize his rule through unparalleled governance and external success. But he couldn't just rely on his own personality, right? He needed systems, structures.
Absolutely. Personal charisma only gets you so far, especially over decades. He needed pillars to support this edifice of enlightened rule. And arguably the most important, most famous one is the imperial examination system, the Kuchu.
Now, didn't the Sui dynasty actually start that?
They did, yes. The idea originated with the Sui. But like many Sui initiatives, it was short-lived and maybe not fully implemented or appreciated. It was really the Tang, and particularly under Taizong, that took the Kuchu and made it a cornerstone of the state, realizing its profound political and social potential.
And that potential addressed the very issue that nearly tore his family apart, right? Merit versus birth.
Exactly. The examination system had sort of two massive impacts that shaped the Tang Dynasty for the next 3 centuries.
Well, what's the first one, the one people usually focus on?
The societal impact, its role as an engine of social mobility. In theory, at least, the Kuchu offered a path for talented men, regardless of their birth or family background, to enter government service based on demonstrated knowledge and ability.
So breaking down that old aristocratic dominance.
That was the idea. Competing on a relatively level playing field, judged on mastery of the classics and administrative skills. This was genuine meritocracy. Centuries before, similar ideas really took hold in Europe, which was still deeply entrenched in hereditary status. It gave hope, channeled ambition, and tied the educated elite directly to the imperial system.
Okay, that's the positive social angle. What was the second impact? You said it was more political, maybe more cynical.
Well, strategically brilliant, certainly. The examinations weren't just testing general knowledge, they tested mastery of a specific state-approved curriculum.
Meaning?
Meaning the Confucian classics, specific commentaries, law codes, official histories, essay styles, all reflecting the orthodox, state-sanctioned worldview. To pass the exams and get a government job, you had to internalize the state's ideology.
So it was a tool for ideological conformity, unifying thought among the elite.
A very effective one. By controlling the syllabus, the emperor ensured that the entire bureaucratic class, the people running the empire, shared a fundamental set of values and assumptions aligned with the imperial state. It wasn't just about finding smart people. It was about finding smart people who thought the right way.
And Taizong himself recognized this, didn't he? There's that famous quote.
Yes, the Tang Shiyan records him watching the successful candidates filing out after the exams, and he apparently remarked with a certain satisfaction, "All the heroes of the realm have entered my snare," or trap.
Chilling. He saw it as a way to capture and channel the ambitions of the brightest minds, locking them into his system.
Pretty much. A sophisticated voluntary mechanism for ensuring loyalty and ideological alignment throughout the administration. It was key to the Tang's stability.
Okay, so the exam system is one pillar. What was the other key element of Zhenguan rule?
This one is perhaps even more surprising given Taizong's violent start, the culture of open counsel. His willingness to listen to criticism, even harsh criticism.
That does seem counterintuitive for someone who sees power so ruthlessly.
It really does. Absolute monarchs aren't typically known for their tolerance of dissent. But Taizong seemed to understand that allowing criticism, even encouraging it, was essential for his project of legitimacy. It made him look like a sage king.
It built the brand, so to speak.
Exactly. And he set a powerful precedent. The Tang Dynasty, for much of its 300 years, was known for being relatively tolerant of intellectuals, not persecuting them simply for disagreeing, which was quite rare. That atmosphere started with Taizong.
And the prime example of this is his relationship with Wei Cheng, right? The guy who advised his dead brother.
Yes, Wei Cheng is the ultimate test case. Taizong not only spared him after the coup, but appointed him to high office and made him one of his chief advisors. And Wei Cheng was famously difficult.
How so?
Blunt, fearless, apparently quite pedantic. He would lecture the emperor constantly, criticizing his decisions, his behavior, everything. He held nothing back.
And Taizong put up with this. Why?
He seemed to recognize the political value. Having such an obviously upright, fearless minister who dared to criticize him was proof of his own enlightenment. If he silenced Wei Cheng, he'd look like a tyrant. By tolerating him, even promoting him, he reinforced his image as a secure, open-minded ruler.
There are some amazing stories about their dynamic, aren't there? The hawk story.
Oh, that's a classic. The story goes, Taizong had received a magnificent hunting hawk and was admiring it in the palace gardens. Someone rushed in and said, "Minister Wei Cheng is coming."
Uh-oh. Lecture incoming.
Taizong panicked. He knew Wei Cheng would probably launch into a tirade about emperors wasting time on frivolous pursuits like falconry instead of state affairs. So quickly, he stuffed the hawk inside the wide sleeve of his imperial robe.
He hid the hawk.
He hid the hawk, and Wei Cheng arrives and, completely oblivious, starts lecturing him about some policy issue. And he goes on and on and on.
While the hawk is
presumably getting rather distressed inside the emperor's robe. Taizong is stuck. He can't interrupt Wei Cheng's righteous lecture. He can't reveal the hawk. He just has to stand there and take it.
What happened to the hawk?
By the time Wei Cheng finally finished and left, Taizong pulled out the hawk, and it had suffocated. It was dead.
Wow. That's been a commitment to the image, I guess, even at the cost of a prize hawk.
It shows the genuine fear Taizong had, not necessarily of Wei Cheng himself, but of being seen to fall short of the ideal of the diligent, virtuous ruler. That fear was a powerful internal check.
And his wife helped reinforce this, didn't she? Empress Changsun.
Brilliantly so. She understood the political theater perfectly. There's another famous incident where Taizong came storming back into the private quarters after a particularly harsh session with Wei Cheng. It was absolute furious, ranting, "Sooner or later, I'm going to kill that country bumpkin." I'm ready.
Strong words. How did the Empress react? Try to calm him down.
Quite the opposite. She immediately excused herself, changed into her most formal ceremonial court robes, and then came back and performed a deep, congratulatory bow to the emperor.
Congratulating him for wanting to kill his chief minister.
He was baffled too. He asked her what on earth she was doing. And she replied, and this is just masterful political judo, "I have always heard that only if the ruler is truly enlightened and wise will his ministers dare to be truly upright and speak frankly. Wei Cheng dares to speak frankly, which proves you are an enlightened ruler. I must congratulate your majesty."
Turning his anger completely on its head, making Wei Cheng's criticism proof of his own virtue.
Exactly. It reframed the entire dynamic. The check wasn't an external force. It was this internal commitment to living up to the image, constantly reinforced by those around him who understood the game. That's the essence of the Zhenguan model of rule.
And Taizong himself seemed to internalize this need for honest feedback. The analogy of the bow.
Right. Another great story illustrating his mindset. He considered himself an expert archer and bowmaker after years of warfare. But one day, A master craftsman pointed out that some of his best, strongest bows, the ones he relied on, were actually slightly warped.
Why?
Because the wood grain wasn't perfectly centered. They still shot powerfully, the craftsman explained, but their flight path would always be subtly off true.
And Taizong drew a lesson from this for governing.
A profound one, he reflected. If even I, who thought I knew everything about bows, could be wrong about something so fundamental, how much more might I be wrong about governing this vast empire? How can I possibly rule straight if you, my ministers, don't constantly point out my flaws and give me honest, even difficult advice?
So he actively embraced criticism as a corrective mechanism, as essential for good governance.
He seemed to genuinely believe it, or at least he understood its absolute necessity for maintaining the legitimacy he so desperately needed. This commitment to self-correction, to seeking truth even when it was uncomfortable, laid the foundation for that unusually open intellectual climate of the Tang.
It really makes you think about the different ways societies have tried to control power, doesn't it? Comparing this Zhenguan model with how things develop, say, in Europe.
It's a stark contrast, absolutely. When you look at the trajectory of Western political thought, especially from the medieval period onwards, the emphasis increasingly falls on institutional constraints on power.
Like Magna Carta, Parliament, constitutions.
Exactly. Documents, bodies, laws, external structures designed to limit what a ruler can do, regardless of whether that ruler is personally virtuous or tyrannical. The underlying assumption, you could argue, is somewhat pessimistic about human nature. Power corrupts, individuals are fallible, therefore we need external rules and institutions to keep them in check.
Whereas the Zhenguan model seems almost the opposite.
It really represents the apex, the ideal form of a traditional Eastern, particularly Confucian-influenced model of rule by man, or perhaps better, rule by virtue.
Meaning the primary check on the emperor wasn't a law or an institution, but himself.
His own moral cultivation, yes. His commitment to sagehood, his self-awareness, his willingness to listen to wise and virtuous advisors. The system relies on the internal qualities of the ruler and the reciprocal relationship of trust and moral guidance between the enlightened ruler and his upright ministers.
It's a system based on mutual trust and shared moral commitment rather than external legal constraints.
Precisely. When it works, as it seemed to during much of Zhenguan, it can create periods of remarkable harmony and effective governance. The obvious fragility, of course, is that it's so heavily dependent on the character of that one individual at the top. What happens when the emperor isn't Taizong? What happens when the ruler isn't committed to that same level of self-restraint and openness?
The whole system potentially breaks down. #outro. So we've traced this incredible arc from the brutal, calculated violence of the Xuanwu Gate fratricide, usurpation, all of it.
Driven by ambition, yes, but also by the failures of the previous emperor and the logic of consolidating power efficiently.
To the subsequent 23 years of the Zhenguan reign, an era defined by stability, relative justice, military success, and this extraordinary culture of open council and meritocracy.
A transformation achieved not by accident, but through a deliberate, sustained, almost obsessive effort by Taizong to legitimize his rule by becoming the very model of a sage king.
It's an astonishing story of political reinvention.
And I think Taizong's true genius, his real formidability, wasn't just the battles he won or the policies he enacted. It was his ability to establish the fundamental political atmosphere, the core values, and the key institutions like the examination system and the culture of council that would shape the Tang Dynasty for the next 3 centuries. He didn't just rule, he set the dynasty's DNA, all arguably stemming from the need to justify that one bloody morning.
Which leaves us with a really difficult question, doesn't it? If these periods we admire, these golden ages of stability and effective governance, sometimes seem to be founded on moments of ruthless, Machiavellian power seizure.
Does the efficiency of that initial brutal act ever truly justify the immorality? Or is the subsequent decades-long effort at redemption and good governance simply the necessary, inescapable price that has to be paid to achieve legitimacy after the fact? We're turning our focus to the later years of Emperor Taizong of the Tang Dynasty. I mean, this is a man universally seen as one of history's true giants.
Absolutely. His reign, the Zhenguan era, it's basically the gold standard, isn't it? Political genius, military power, just brilliant administration.
It really is. But, and this is what we're digging into today, there's this paradox. Even this incredible ruler, who seemed to have mastered everything, he faced these two huge controversial issues right at the end of his life.
Yeah, lasting regrets, things that really tested the limits of, well, even his power.
So we're going beyond the standard accounts here, really getting into the tension. This is all happening around the 19th year of his reign, leading up to his death a few years later.
And our deep dive today, it sort of has two main goals. First, we need to understand the geopolitical logic, why he felt pushed into this massive, potentially disastrous war against Gaogouli.
Especially when it looked so much like the exact mistake that destroyed the dynasty right before the Sui.
Exactly. And the second thing, which is maybe even more personal, is the succession struggle. How did the fight over who would follow him turn into the same kind of dynastic violence, brother against brother, that he himself used to get the throne?
The Xuanwu Gate Incident, yeah. It's like history repeating itself, but within his own family. So it's this mix of big picture geopolitics and intense family drama.
Okay, let's start with the war, the Gaogouli campaign. Because the reason for it, well, it wasn't really about grabbing land or resources, not directly anyway.
Right, it was about something bigger.
Much bigger. It was about the Tang Dynasty's identity, how Taizong saw his empire. He saw it as the undisputed center, the hegemon of East Asia.
The core of that whole Sinocentric system where everyone else kind of orbits around China.
Precisely. This wasn't just about being the strongest militarily. It was about maintaining an entire international order. And that order was built on ritual, on tribute.
And tribute wasn't just sending gifts, was it? It was a political statement.
Absolutely. It was acknowledging the Tang Emperor as the son of heaven, the ultimate source of legitimacy in the region. So if a kingdom on the border refused to pay tribute,
or worse, attacked one of Tang's allies,
then it wasn't just a minor issue. It was a challenge to the entire world order as they saw it, a fundamental crisis.
It makes me think of the Roman concept, Pax Romana. Sometimes you need to project power, not just for conquest, but to keep the peace, protect your allies, right? Maintain stability.
That's the core logic of empire, isn't it? A show of force becomes necessary, not always for aggression, but to maintain order, punish states that step out of line, and reassure your friends.
Because if you don't act,
you look weak. And the whole carefully constructed system of prestige and authority could just collapse. That was the fear.
And the specific problem here, the kingdom that was causing this friction, was Gaogouli, up in the north of the Korean peninsula.
Right. You had this complex situation on the peninsula, three main states. Silla, down in the southeast, they were the reliable ally, always sending tribute, very loyal to the Central Plains dynasties.
Even through the messy period before the time.
Exactly. Then you had Pache and the big one, Gaogouli, and Gaogouli was the problem.
They weren't paying tribute properly. And crucially, they kept attacking Silla, Tang's main ally in the region.
Yes, repeatedly attacking Silla. And this put Taizong in a really tough spot because, as you said, this was the exact same trigger that led Emperor Yangti of the Sui dynasty into his disastrous campaigns against Gaogouli.
The campaigns that basically destroyed the Sui dynasty.
Completely undermined it. So Taizong is facing the same strategic problem, but he's haunted by the ghost of what happened last time. He knows the risks.
Let's just pause on how bad that Sui mistake was. Emperor Yangti's invasion. It wasn't just a defeat. It was catastrophic logistically.
Oh, it was almost unbelievable. The scale. For the first campaign, Yangti supposedly mobilized 1.13 million soldiers.
1.13 million.
Yeah. And that's just the soldiers. He apparently needed another 2 million laborers just for transport and supplies. Think about that. Over 3 million people involved.
Pulled from all over the empire. The resources. The manpower.
And trying to funnel all that into the narrow, mountainous Korean peninsula, it was impossible. The supply lines just couldn't cope. They stretched for hundreds of miles, constantly breaking down or getting attacked.
So the army starves, the supplies get abandoned.
And the cost back home. The taxes, the conscription, taking millions of farmers off the land. It directly led to huge resentment, revolts, and eventually the collapse of the Sui.
It sounds less like a war and more like some kind of grand, doomed military parade.
That's a good way to put it. It bankrupted the empire and shattered its legitimacy.
So Taizong knew all this. He knew Gaogouli, even if weaker overall, was tough. They'd been fighting off Chinese invasions for centuries, right, since the Han Dynasty.
Exactly. They had experience. So Taizong couldn't just repeat Yangti's mistake of trying to overwhelm them with sheer numbers. He had to be smarter, more strategic.
So what was his plan? How did he try to manage the risks?
Well, first, he dramatically cut down the size of the army. Around 100,000 men. Still a large force, capable of winning battles, but manageable.
Manageable logistically, and hopefully not big enough to cause that kind of massive resentment back home if things went badly.
Right. Avoid the internal collapse that doomed the Sui. And his second key principle was the timeline: speed.
Get in, get it done, get out.
Precisely. Launch the invasion in the spring, achieve the objectives, probably force Gaogouli back into the tribute system, stop the attacks on Silla, and then withdraw before winter.
Because the Korean winter is brutal, right? Especially for soldiers from central China.
Extremely brutal. Sub-zero temperatures, snow, ice. The Central Plain soldiers just weren't equipped or prepared for that. A campaign that dragged on into late autumn or winter was doomed to fail through attrition and exposure, even if they were winning battles. Swiftness was everything. So the plan seemed sound on paper, controlled force, clear timeline, but as often happens, reality on the ground is a bit more complicated. Gaogouli wasn't going to just roll over.
They were ready for a different kind of fight. More defensive, maybe?
Definitely. A war of attrition, playing to their strength, terrain, and defense. But before the campaign really got bogged down, there was a significant battle near Anqi Fortress.
Ah, yes. This is where we see the Tang army could actually fight, and fight well when they got the chance.
Oh, absolutely. It was a moment where the Tang were massively outnumbered, maybe 30,000 or 40,000 Tang troops facing a huge relief army sent by Gaogouli, possibly including Moho tribal allies. Estimates go up to like 150,000, maybe even 250,000.
So terrible odds.
Terrible odds. But Taizong himself was commanding, and he showed his tactical skill. He apparently lured this massive enemy force into a constricted area, a valley where their numbers couldn't be fully brought to bear.
Neutralizing their advantage. Smart.
Very smart. Then he launched a counterattack, and this is where we get that story. Shi Zhenkui.
Right, the soldier who really made a name for himself here.
Yeah, he was just an ordinary soldier at the time, low rank. But in the thick of the fighting, he just charged right into the enemy lines.
Didn't they say he was dressed all in white? White armor, white horse, charging through the mud and rain?
That's the image, yeah. Pure audacity.
Right.
Breaking through the enemy formations. Taizong saw it, apparently. He had an eye for talent, for bravery.
And he recognized it on the spot.
Instantly. Pulled him out, promoted him. Later, Taizong apparently said that finding Shi Zhenkui was the single best thing to come out of the whole Gaogouli campaign. Praised his courage above capturing any city.
Wow. So, a clear tactical victory. The enemy's main field army was crushed. But the campaign still stalled. Why?
Because beating the field army wasn't enough. Gaogouli had this incredible defensive system. We could call it their 3-in-1 defense. It was perfectly designed to stop a Central Plains invasion.
Okay, what were the 3 parts?
First, natural barriers. Think geography. The Liao River, then the Yalu River further in. These are major rivers, huge obstacle.
Right, it'd slow down any invasion force, mess up supply lines. Crossing them takes time, resources.
Exactly. The Tang army spent weeks just dealing with the Liao River crossing, building bridges, using boats, fighting off Gaogouli skirmishers, all eating into that precious short timeline Taizong had set.
Okay, so natural barriers is number 1. What's 2?
Number 2, fortress-based tactics. Gaogouli wasn't trying to win big, open battles after Anqi. They relied on a network of incredibly strong fortresses built across the northeast border. Stone walls, well-supplied garrisons.
Designed specifically to delay an invader, force them into long, costly sieges.
Precisely. Anqi Fortress itself, even after the relief army was destroyed nearby, it still didn't surrender. The Tang army had to settle in for a siege, and every day spent besieging a fortress was a day closer.
Winter, the third element.
Winter, that was their ultimate weapon. The fortress defenders knew it, they just had to hold out, refuse to surrender, even when things looked bad, because they knew the cold was coming.
The first heavy snowfall could cripple the Tang logistics, demoralize the soldiers from the south.
It would defeat the army more effectively than any garrison could. So, yeah, the defenders held on stubbornly. They knew winter was their best general, as the saying might go.
So you've got these fortresses just refusing to fall, bleeding Tang time and resources.
And this is where a fundamental problem emerges within the Tang command structure itself, a real contradiction.
They're kind of contradiction.
It's about Taizong's role. Remember, he won the throne as this daring warrior leading cavalry charges himself, but now he's the emperor. His personal safety is the absolute top priority for his advisors.
Ah, so he can't take the same risks.
Not at all. And this clashed with what some of his commanders thought was needed. People like General Li Taizong, they argued for boldness.
What did they suggest?
Things like bypassing the fortresses, taking a smaller, lightly equipped force and making a deep, fast strike towards the Gaogouli capital, Pyongyang. Risky, yes, but potentially decisive. Force a quick surrender.
Which fits Taizong's original goal of a swift war.
Exactly. But these plans were shot down. By whom? By the senior civilian officials around the emperor, especially his most trusted advisor, his brother-in-law Chongsun Wuchi.
And their reasoning.
Protect the emperor. No risks. They insisted on a slow, methodical advance. Secure the supply lines, reduce the fortresses one by one, make sure Taizong was never in any danger.
So you have this impossible situation. The strategic goal demands speed, but the emperor's safety demands caution.
It's a fundamental clash. You can't have both a lightning war and a strategy obsessed with minimizing every possible risk to the leader. The cautious approach won out.
And the clock kept ticking. Autumn arrives.
Late autumn. The siege of Anxi is still grinding on. Taizong looks at the calendar, looks at the weather turning. He sees it's not going to happen. Not this year.
He had to make the call.
He ordered the withdrawal, pulled the army back before the worst of the winter hit. So the war wasn't a total disaster like the Sudis. He avoided that, but it was inconclusive. A failure to achieve his objectives. A deep personal regret for him.
It really shows the limits, doesn't it? Even for a great empire, geography, climate, and a determined local defense can create a quagmire, like, well, more modern examples we could think of.
Absolutely. It's a classic case study in the boundaries of imperial power when faced with those kinds of asymmetric challenges. So that's the external challenge, the limits of Tang power abroad in Gaogouli. But the second big regret of Taizong's later years, it hits much closer to home. It's internal. It's about his own sons.
The succession struggle. And this one is just dripping with irony, isn't it? Given how Taizong himself came to power.
Oh, the irony is profound. He seized the throne in the Xuanwu Gate Incident by, well, killing his elder brother, the crown prince, and his younger brother who supported the crown prince. Then he basically forced his own father to abdicate.
A brutal precedent-setting act of violence. And now, years later, he sees his own son starting down a similar path.
Exactly. The main players were the official crown prince, Li Chengqian, and his ambitious younger brother, the Prince of Wei, Li Tai.
Li Chengqian was the designated heir, groomed for the role. What went wrong with him?
He started off okay, apparently, but as he got older, he became, well, rebellious. And in a very specific, politically charged way, he developed this fascination, this admiration for Turkic culture.
The culture of the nomadic groups that Tang had often fought against. That sounds problematic for an heir to the Chinese throne.
Hugely problematic. It wasn't just appreciating it, it was like he was rejecting his own heritage. He started dressing in full Turkic attire, braiding his hair like a nomad, even setting up a yurt, a nomad tent, in the palace grounds to live in.
Actively shunning the proper court life and rituals.
Yes. And it got quite extreme. There are accounts of him and his attendants holding these mock Turkic funerals, complete with some pretty intense mourning rituals, like cutting their faces with knives to show loyalty through bloodshed, a Turkic custom.
Wow. That's not just rebellion, that's a complete cultural alienation. It must have deeply worried Taizong.
Deeply. It suggested the crown prince wasn't just being difficult. Maybe he wasn't fit to rule a sophisticated agrarian empire like the Tang. Maybe he didn't respect its core values.
And this created an opening, right, for the other brother, Li Tai.
Precisely. Li Tai, the Prince of Wei, saw his chance. He was apparently quite intelligent, maybe a bit overweight, but very sharp, and incredibly cunning. He knew how to play the game.
What was his strategy?
Political performance. He cultivated this image of being the ideal Confucian prince. He became a great patron of scholars, commissioning huge literary projects like compiling historical texts or encyclopedias.
Making himself look wise, scholarly, dedicated to Chinese culture, the opposite of his brother.
Exactly. He was trying to win over the court officials and, crucially, win over his father by appearing perfectly suited to rule.
And did it work? Did people start favoring him?
It did start to work. The court began to split into factions. Some very senior officials started whispering to Taizong, maybe even openly advising him, that Li Tai would be a much better choice than the increasingly wayward crown prince.
The pressure must have been building on both brothers and on the emperor.
Immense pressure. And Li Tai, sensing he might be close, made this incredibly bold, almost theatrical move.
What did he do?
He went to his father, Taizong, and made this astonishing promise. He said, "If you make me emperor, I swear that before I die, I will kill my own son."
Kill his own son.
Yes. kill his own son so that he could then pass the throne not to his line but to his younger brother, Li Qi.
Why would he promise that?
To prove his complete lack of selfish ambition, to show he only cared about the dynasty, not his own lineage. It was meant as the ultimate display of selflessness.
And Taizong? Did he buy it?
Apparently he was initially quite moved. It seemed like such an extreme sacrifice, but thankfully he mentioned this promise to one of his most trusted and frankly shrewdest ministers, Chu Suiliang.
And Chu Suiliang saw through it.
Instantly. His response was brilliant. He basically said to Taizong, think about it. Once a man has absolute power, the power of an emperor, could he really bring himself to kill his own beloved son just to pass the throne to his brother? It goes against human nature.
He called it out as just manipulation, a performance.
Exactly. He exposed it. Li Tai wasn't being selfless. He was just acting, saying whatever he thought his father wanted to hear to get the throne. His sincerity was just a show for the audience.
That's sharp thinking. It must have made Taizong pause.
It definitely did. But while Taizong was grappling with this, and the pressure from Li Tai's faction kept mounting, the crown prince, Li Shimin, panicked.
He felt like he was about to be replaced.
He did, and he made a disastrous decision. He decided to plot a coup, to try and seize power before he could be formally deposed.
A coup needs soldiers. Where did he find support?
This is another tragic twist. He managed to involve General Hu Qinshi.
Hu Qinshi. Wasn't he one of the great heroes who helped found the Tang Dynasty? His portrait was in the Lingyan Pavilion, the gallery of greatest contributors.
The very same. A celebrated, decorated general. So why would he turn traitor? Resentment.
Resentment against Taizong.
Yes. Some years earlier, Hu had conquered the wealthy kingdom of Kaochang in Central Asia, but afterwards he was impeached, accused of allowing his troops to loot and maybe taking too much for himself. Taizong punished him, disciplined him publicly.
And Hao felt this was unfair, that his achievements weren't properly recognized.
He felt deeply wronged, humiliated, this proud general being censured. It festered. Some sources say he became anxious, couldn't sleep, had nightmares. He felt his standing with the emperor was damaged.
So he saw aligning with the desperate crown prince as a way back, or maybe even a path to more power for himself.
Possibly both.
Yeah.
Maybe he thought Cheng Qian was weak and could be manipulated. Maybe he had grander ambitions. We don't know for sure. But before the plot could really get going, it fell apart. Betrayal. And inside Hao Qinqi's own circle, his son-in-law, a man named Holan Chushi, got wind of it.
And decided to save himself.
Looks like it. He went to the authorities, exposed the whole conspiracy to protect himself and his own family. Hou Qinqi was arrested, the crown prince was implicated, the whole thing collapsed.
And the fate of Hou Qinqi, the great general.
Execution. A tragic end for someone who had contributed so much at the beginning. So, the coup plot is exposed, Li Chengchen is deposed, Hou Qinqi is executed. This forces Taizong into this really grim process of interrogation, figuring out exactly who was involved, why it happened. And it's during this process, specifically when questioning his disgraced son, Li Chengfian, that Taizong has this moment of profound realization.
What did Chengtian say?
According to the histories, Chengtian basically broke down and said something like, I wouldn't have done this, I wouldn't have resorted to a coup. If my brother, the Prince of Wei, Li Tai, hadn't been pressing me so hard, hadn't made my position impossible.
So he blames Li Tai's relentless ambition for driving him to desperation.
Exactly. And hearing this, it was like a switch flipped for Taizong. He suddenly saw the whole dynamic with painful clarity. This bitter rivalry, the plotting, the pressure turning into potential violence.
It was the Xuanwu Gate Incident all over again. His own past.
It was a direct echo. He saw his own actions, the precedent he had set by killing his brothers to take the throne, now playing out with his own sons. It was like a tragic cycle, the sins of the father coming back to haunt the family.
He realized that by seizing power through force based on capability rather than birth order, he'd created a dangerous model, a model his sons were now following.
Yes. The violence he used had become like a curse on the succession. He understood that if he now chose Li Tai, the cunning, ambitious one who had pushed his brother into treason,
it would basically reward that ruthless ambition.
Yeah.
It would validate the idea that the throne belongs to whoever is strong and cunning enough to take it, regardless of the method.
and it would almost certainly lead to more bloodshed. Li Tai wasn't subtle. After Chengxin was deposed, Li Tai apparently became arrogant, already acting like the heir.
And he started threatening the next brother in line.
Exactly. The third brother, Li Qi, the Prince of Qin. He was much quieter, seen as perhaps weaker or gentler. Some of the senior officials were starting to think maybe he was a safer option. Li Tai saw this and started making threats against Li Qi.
Trying to intimidate any potential rival.
Taizong found out about these threats. He saw Li Qi was genuinely scared, and that crystallized everything. He realized he couldn't choose Li Chengqian, obviously, but he also couldn't choose Li Tai.
Why not Li Tai, now that his main rival was gone?
Because Taizong foresaw what would happen. If Li Tai became emperor, he would have to eliminate his brothers, especially Li Qi and their supporters, to secure his power. There would be purges, executions, another Xuanwu Gate, or worse, a civil war tearing the empire apart right after his death.
So Taizong's top priority became stopping the cycle, preventing that immediate implosion.
Absolutely. Above everything else, he needed stability. He needed to prevent his own violent accession from becoming the norm. He had built this powerful, stable dynasty, and he couldn't let his son's rivalry destroy it.
So what did he do? He had two main contenders, both now disqualified in his eyes.
He made a truly remarkable decision. He decided to abandon both of them. Li Chengxian was formally deposed and exiled. Li Tai was also demoted and effectively removed from the line of succession.
He chose
the third son, Li Qi, the Prince of Qin, the one who hadn't really been playing the game.
the quiet one, the one seen as maybe less capable, less forceful than the other two.
Yes, but his perceived weakness, or perhaps his neutrality, became his greatest strength in this situation. Li Qi hadn't been actively plotting or scheming. He'd stayed out of the bitter fight between his brothers.
There's that old idea, isn't there? Sometimes the best way to contend is not to contend at all. Stay quiet, stay neutral.
It worked perfectly here. Taizong saw him as the compromise candidate, the safe choice. Selecting Li Qi wouldn't empower either of the warring factions at court that had supported Chengqian or Tai.
It was a way to break the deadlock, to cool things down.
Exactly. Placate the different groups, ensure a peaceful transition, prevent immediate chaos when he died. Li Qi wasn't chosen because he was the most brilliant or the most ruthless, the qualities Taizong himself embodied, but because he was the safest, the least likely to start killing his relatives the moment he got power.
So stability over perceived competence, in a way.
So when Taizong finally passed away in 649 AD, he left behind this incredible legacy. I mean, by almost any measure, character, achievements, talent, he remains one of the greatest emperors in history. Just phenomenal.
Absolutely. The Zhenguan era is still looked back on as a golden age. But, as we've unpacked today, even someone of his immense stature wasn't immune to, well, certain fundamental limits.
Yeah, that's right. The Gaogouli campaign showed the limits of imperial power against determined local defense, geography, and climate. You can't conquer everything just because you're strong.
And the succession crisis revealed something even more personal, didn't it? The limits of his ability to control the consequences of his own past actions, the tragic, almost inescapable cycle of power struggles within the ruling family.
He saw that cycle starting again, the echo of Xuanwu Gate, and made a conscious choice to break it. He prioritized peace and stability for his family and the empire over potentially choosing a more capable but dangerous successor like Li Tai.
He chose the compromise, Li Qi, to prevent immediate bloodshed. A final act of wisdom, perhaps, trying to secure a peaceful future.
It certainly prevented another immediate bout of fratricide, but here's a final thought to leave you with, maybe a bit provocative.
Okay.
By choosing the safest candidate, Li Qi, the one who wasn't a strong, dominating figure like himself or Li Tai, did Taizong inadvertently create a different kind of power vacuum? Meaning, by removing the strong contenders and opting for someone seen as perhaps more pliable, more easily influenced, did he unintentionally clear the path for new, unexpected forces to rise and compete for influence around the throne? Did ensuring peace for his sons perhaps pave the way for a different kind of power struggle entirely, one that his safe successor might not be equipped to manage?
So solving one problem might have laid the groundwork for another down the line. That's definitely something to think about. If you found this discussion useful, maybe learned something new, definitely hit that subscribe button. We do these deep dives regularly, exploring valuable ideas.
We appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.